And here we are, live with Mephalta.
Oh.
Take it away, Nick.
Nope. I guess. I wasn't ready to be the main commentator.
There's nothing to announce.
Yeah, I mean, no, this is real fun, though. It has been really fun. How long have we been doing this? It's like the 5th meeting or something like that?
I think about a month now.
Yeah, 4 meetings.
So, I mean, I think this is the most new music that I've heard in that time period in a long time. Again, I never look out for new music.
I can't wait to hear your opinions, Nick.
Oh, this is an interesting week, yeah. Even for me, too. I went Animal Collective, so that's just...
I think all the albums were pretty interesting. Like, they're all kind of like way far away from each other in style and even...
Yeah, they're all things I probably wouldn't have listened to now.
I'll go first because it seems like nobody wants to, okay?
Sounds good.
So, let me just open up my notebook here. Wow. Oh, wait, you weren't supposed to see that. Okay, JK. So we're starting with Archangels, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll skip to the summary here because I had a lot of thoughts about like every single track. And I also have been rating the albums. I give this one a 9 of 10, and that's a pretty good score because it's a really good album. One of the best albums of 2015, I think. 2015, I want to say. Anyway, I don't know if you guys listen to a lot of Grimes, but if you do, you'll know that this album was a real turning point, and it sounds very different from all of her other stuff.
It does.
It has a lot more structure, right? A lot more structure. Okay. Because a lot of her older tracks are just like the whole time. But this one is not really like that. So let's see what I put as the most. All right. Yeah, I wrote that. And as far as like cohesiveness, which I always like think about when I listen to an album, is like how cohesive is this? And I'll say this album is very cohesive. Like each track is really strong on its own, but it definitely has its own sound overall, which is very impressive. Anytime someone is able to accomplish that. And even in this, there's like, she creates characters, which is really interesting, like especially in a Kill V Mame. Like her character is like some androgynous like mob boss, like vampire mob boss, which is fucking sick. I think story-based writing is really cool as well, which is like why I was super pumped to be in Mephalta, is because it is like very story based and like there are a lot of characters in it, which is very fun because you can explore like all these different facets of other people's personalities within yourself. So she does that really well, and I think this album excels at for sure are like vocal layers. Like there's so many vocal layers in like every song, and this like dichotomy of like really heavy stuff and like really light ethereal stuff, which makes you notice each one in a lot more detail, I think, because you like notice the dichotomy in them. And oh yeah, so I wrote is a very nice balance between power and vulnerability, because if you notice like Venus Fly or Kill V Mame are these like just like absolutely powerful songs. They're just like, man, I'm in the club about to like kill someone, like that's the vibe. And then I don't know, songs like Pin or Butterfly or whatever, just like I'm going through changes, man. Like I'm human, I'm vulnerable like anybody else. And whenever someone's able to showcase like the entire cycle, the entire like range of emotion, that's very impressive to me. And like still have it be a cohesive album, really like that. And yeah, my fave tracks are Flesh Without Blood's like a classic, obviously. I love Pin, and I love World Princess Part 2. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on that matter.
Nice.
Cool.
Cohesive notes.
Who,
Yeah, seriously.
pick someone to go next.
I'll go next. I'm on the top of the screen. So yeah, I heard Grimes. I'd never really listened to Grimes. I heard of her in 2012, and that's when the song's Oblivion, right? That was big back
From
then.
Visions, yeah.
Either Genesis or Oblivion. I apologize for not knowing which one's the actual song. But no, it was she was making her own style. There was no way, she was doing what anyone else did, really. There had been a lot of other artists who kind of went that route, with the ethereal, electronic setting too. But she was definitely on her own and doing something different. And it's funny that you mentioned Lauren, like she really did a lot with the vocal experimentation. And when I listened to this album for the first time for this talk, I woke up, it was like 7:30 in the morning, and I put it on, and the music videos were playing. And it was just an overload. I couldn't take it. Like, it was just too much all at once. There was so much going on, and it was just very, like, it was turning the Grimes up to 11. And I was just like, holy shit, this is a lot. So then today I sat down and listened to the rest of the album, and I found that it got increasingly more cohesive, in my opinion. Like, she started to find a structure and play with it and work with it. Like, play with it, like, just have fun and see what she could do. But at the same time, it started to build upon itself. You mentioned songs like Pin and World Princess, Part 2. And that's cool because you mentioned the characters, like there's part 2s, there's a concept behind it. I'm always a sucker for that stuff. So I'm good. Thank you. So and her synthesizer work, she has really good taste in how much synth to put in where. One of my favorite electronic artists is Imogen Heap. And the thing is about Imogen, like, she's really good about that too. It's not just washing everything with synths. She picks very precise moments to place them and how to modulate them. And I think Grimes kind of takes after that. But yeah, I mean, it's really cool because I know she got really big with this album. So it's nice to see that she could enter that huge, the huge music industry with a little bit of grace, but also keep to what she was doing. Just like in the music videos I mentioned, she's still Grimes. Her music videos are incredibly elaborate. Like, there's so much going on. She even got like this Scream was really hardcore.
You saw the Kill V Main music video then, right?
No, I'd rather listen to the music. Like, I've decided I'm just going to listen to the music for now.
Well, at some point
and just pay attention to that.
It is a really good video.
Okay.
It's
a good song. And that's when I started. Yeah, that's when I started noticing, because like the first 3 songs were like, okay, if the whole album's going to be like this is going to be rough, because it was going a little too all over the place. It hadn't really balanced itself yet. And then by the time Kill B Main comes around, you kind of know where it's going. So again, the synth work is really cool. And again, she does, she keeps steady beats. She doesn't drastically change drum tones. She kind of keeps with what she knows, but she goes outside to make some, cool, definitely pop-oriented stuff. Which, like, I really like what she did before in retrospect, but at the same time, it's, I'm not a huge fan of her, but it's cool to see that she definitely evolved and established herself with that style. Like, that's really cool, especially someone who's putting so much, concept behind the music. It's not just, oh, cool music. There's a lot of, it's elaborate with its meaning and settings and themes and stuff like that. So, yeah, it was cool. It was refreshing to watch the album kind of grow. So, it was a good time.
Sick.
Just
Who's that?
pick someone to go next, Nick.
Lucas is under me. So, Lucas, if you want to go next.
Sure.
All right.
This is not my favorite Grimes album, to be honest. I like Visions, and I like the new album a lot, actually. Although so far, I've only listened to like 2 songs off of it, but so far I really like it. And then I like Gaiety Prime as well, because it's the Doom reference. So it's just, she has a lot of those like references including this album, even though it's like a lot more like poppy comparatively. But yeah, she does have like a really good knack for narrative and storytelling and things like that, which is like pretty original considering like what passes for pop sometimes. Just it doesn't have any sort of like novel storytelling a lot of times, which is fine, but that's the sort of thing I gravitate towards. So this album, like, it's definitely like more bubblegummy in some aspects. And then there's one particular song, I don't know the name of it. I might try and look it up real quick. But it kind of honestly reminded me of Billie Eilish, and I think like Billie Eilish's song, the like Bad Guy, almost like is heavily influenced by this song that Grimes did, because she's singing in French, though I'm pretty sure. I didn't really pay too much attention to that, but the end like stops with this like this bass, boost, and it sounds a lot like something that, like, if it had kept going on with that, it would have been Bad Guy by Billie Eilish. It's like almost a very similar theme. Obviously they're not the same song, but I feel like she's probably influenced her. So, and directly from this album too. So, those are kind of just about my thoughts on it. Like, I kind of know what Grimes is about a little bit, just because I've listened to a few of her albums, but I'm not a huge fan of this album. And that's just a personal opinion, because it's obviously a more mature album in the sense that it's like accessible. It's definitely more accessible, but I just like Visions more. That's all. That's all it comes down to.
Like, I agree with you in the sense that Visions is like almost like, I'm not really like peak Grimes, but it's like the most Grimes album, if that makes sense. Like, that's her doing like what she does best for sure, with all the ethereal vocal melodies and shit like that. But I feel like Flesh Without Blood is a little bit more not Flesh Without Blood, sorry, that's the song, but Our Angel's a little bit more like fleshed out, I guess, in a weird way. It's a little bit more conformist as far as pop goes, but like the tracks are
I mean, I can't really hold a candle to your analysis because it was a lot more in depth, so I shouldn't really throw too much shade. I still like Grimes. I'm just that was my kind of first impression.
Cool.
So, Royce, go ahead.
It's funny you mentioned music videos, because I actually got into Grimes because of music videos.
Okay.
There was this song, Vanessa, this single. I don't know, you probably know this song, Lauren. And that's what got me into Grimes. And we're talking about old albums being better, I guess, in a way. I do like them better. And I'm just going to kind of tackle the issue of like being one note, her old stuff being sort of like one note and not as refined as these newer albums. But I personally, I'm with Lucas. I like the older stuff better. But I do have to say that the second half of this album, I was like really, really into, and not just for its own reasons. Like I haven't listened to this album because I think I gave it a try, and I felt, although I really liked the opening track, I think that those orchestral like sounds are really fucking cool. Like, it really shows that she has like a lot more talent than, than like people give her, you know, at least in instrumentation and all that stuff.
It's very natural talent too, by the way. Like, it as much as like, you know, there are a lot of like gearheads and stuff that make electronic music, and I watched a live with her where they were like, "What synths are you using? Like, what synths are you using right now?" And she was like, "I don't know. I found them. Like, my friends let me borrow them," and that's just like so fucking weird to me that she wasn't just like, "Oh, it's an Arturia Brute." Like, you know, I researched the synth for like 36 hours. No, she's just like, I don't fucking know what synth it is. I'm just making weird noises.
Yeah.
It's like some innate talent right there.
Yeah. So that's kind of what drove me to Grimes. It was like that almost like amateur feel, you know, like that sort of like very raw, like on her older albums, I just always felt like, I don't know, like if I ever, like anybody could do it, but of course you got to have she of course has a talent to create something with emotion and you know, and just emote all these vocal symphony, like local symphonies with herself, I guess, if that makes any sense. But when it comes to this album, the second half, like Kill versus Main, the fucking album is intoxicating. I mean, that song is intoxicating. I couldn't stop listening to it once I got into it, and Pin as well. I think my favorite, I don't know why, is Easily. I really like that song too. It's just like the slow sort of things. I just feel like she has all this, I don't know, she doesn't limit herself to kind of get influence within the genre of pop music in this album. Especially like she doesn't limit herself, and she doesn't go like, oh, well, this is more like 2000s pop music, or this is more like, you know, 90s dance pop or whatever. Like, I feel like every song kind of goes into a different sort of style. To me, the second half to me is like 90s dance pop, and then there's a few songs that are even sort of like a bit of like psychedelic, you know. I think Pin is one of them, if I'm not mistaken. It has like this sort of psych feel, and I don't know. I would say that I enjoyed it the more I listened to it. So, and I listened to it a lot. I feel like I listened to it like maybe 3 times. You know, while riding the bike or washing dishes, like, and eventually, like, once it caught on, it really catches on, and I just really, really enjoyed it. I ended up enjoying it a lot, and but you know, I guess big take I have is that her old music and her new music are, I feel like I share that sentiment with Lucas when I first listened to it, and I was like, nah, this is not Grimes. This is not why I like Grimes. But I feel like this is on its own is like pretty good after listening to it for a few times. I guess, I mean, it's just more of a subjective kind of take, I feel like, for me, just because I'm a very big fan of Grimes, and I think that's all I have to say. Yeah.
Her new stuff sounds a lot more like her old stuff.
Well, what I forgot to like mention too is like I feel like a part of these discussions we should mention like what we can take away from these albums and like use in our own music, I guess, like in our own like dynamic. And one thing that I take away from this a lot is that you can really hear like intuition. And maybe if you don't like the album, whatever, you think she's like conform. But in my personal opinion, I feel like you can hear like her just like use her intuition and create these tracks, which is something you can always take away. It's just like in a lot of cases, like making tracks and like making music is just like a lot of times don't try to think about what people would do in like popular music, I guess. Yeah. But like use your intuition to make tracks, and I can definitely hear her just like using intuition in a lot of these tracks, like using intuition as far as like this is what the melody should be, this is what the repetition should be, like these are the elements that need to stay in or come out, whatever.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what I take mostly just from Grimes in general is just sonically just that sound that she creates, you know, and has a lot to do with her looping, and I just always like how that sounds, you know, looping stuff and etc. But, you know, one of the reasons I kind of want to add some electronic elements to my drums are heavily influenced by Grimes in general, and this album has a lot of stuff that doesn't come off as like, you know, sort of like, I guess, tacky electronic, you know, like incorporated in a way where it's a lot more based in samples and just like very subtle. whereas it just adds instead of like it distracts from it. And all the drums, if any percussion aspects of her music in general, I think influences me a lot. So in this album, it's no different. It's a little different style, but I still take a lot from it. From that.
Yeah, I would say specifically too in like Sylvie Mame, if you're thinking about percussion in these albums, that little lead up to like the pre-chorus with the drum hit that's like choo 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 choo, like that is so good to me.
I agree. Then again, I'm very subjective because I like the sound, and I don't know.
Yeah, my take will probably be a counterpoint to your guys's that are like fans of hers. Because I wasn't too into this album, but you guys already heard like the type of music I listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Are you sorry, I didn't see if you were finished with your take.
I'm kind of surprised with the music you listen to.
Wait, what was that?
I said I'm actually kind of surprised you wouldn't like this album based on the music you listen to. I thought you'd actually really like it.
There was something about the tone. I mean, not the actual synths and like the samples she chose, because it was said before she has like pretty good taste with like actual tone and like just the natural talent to fit it together. And like whenever I found out she was the one that was married to his name, Elon, I knew that she was either weird or she was a nerd.
Okay,
separate
album from that fact though. Come on, like you can't judge this album like partially based on the fact.
No, I'm not. That's just the first time I heard about her. Like, because I've never even heard a song from her, heard her name or anything like that. But yeah, like that was my first initial sight of her, I guess. But yeah, I do enjoy like her tones and like how she decided to place them and stuff. But it's like with that looping effect that Royce was saying he liked. Like, I don't like it whenever a song stays the same for too long. Otherwise, my brain starts to drift off naturally. So a lot of these songs I would end up just getting just a little bit bored with the direction they would take. But that's just because my brain is conditioned for like the constant change every 5 seconds. So I understand that's a subjective opinion. And I definitely got a lot of different vibes from this album, like all together. Like, I didn't necessarily hate the album. It's just not something that I'd probably end up listening to. She definitely sounds like she takes a lot of inspiration from like video game and like sci-fi movie soundtracks and stuff, which is really cool to hear like integrated into like pop. And I'm not like the biggest fan of like American pop, because there's even like bits that I would get like, I don't know, almost old Taylor Swifty vocal melodies from. The words are completely different, of course, but like just some pop that I've always been conditioned to hear on the radio and like that kind of stuff.
How dare you, Jimmy? How dare you put Taylor Swift and Grimes in the same sentence?
Honestly, yeah, how fucking dare you? Jesus Christ.
That was disgusting, dude.
Well, no, that's where I'm getting is she follows a very formulaic
I know what
pop.
you mean. But still, you could have said Katy Perry. You could have said Katy Perry or Churches.
Honestly, I don't know. I honestly could be meaning Katy
Madonna.
Perry or Churches.
There's so many good pop stars out there.
I say Taylor Swift, but I don't even think I can name a Taylor Swift song. I just remember my niece listening to her. All I remember is the structure of the song and her vocal melody, which it's really not a bad thing, especially like it's definitely a testament to like why she's big and popular and stuff.
Well, I was saying, I think I was muted, but I was saying, like, if you think this album is too structured and poppy, then just listen to Visions, honestly.
Yeah, you'll like Visions, Jimmy.
I mean, honestly, because there were bits that were really ethereal and like prime, like, and I mean, she's going to be in what was it? I forgot what game she's going to be in that's coming out that I've been waiting for. The one with Keanu Reeves in it.
Cyberpunk?
Yeah, Cyberpunk 2027, whatever it is.
2077.
Like, she's got a song. Yeah. Like, she's got a song in there, and it definitely fits. She fits that almost, like, synthwave, vaporwave vibe sometimes. And then there was this other song that sounded like it was a straight, like, Die Antwoord song.
I love that.
Yeah,
The
it's a lot of fun.
one with, it wasn't Japanese. Was it Chinese? Chinese vocal?
It was Taiwanese.
Taiwanese vocals in this album? Are you talking about on, like, Scream or something?
I think it was Scream.
Yeah, Scream.
Yeah.
It was Scream.
I didn't know what language that was, but honestly, I fucking hated that track the first time that I heard it. And then I listened to it a couple more times around this week, and I was like, actually, this kind of fucking slaps. Like, goddamn.
Yeah.
See, like I mentioned with the music videos before, like I woke up to see that. I was just like, yo, no, like this is too much, man. Like it pissed me off. I'll admit, like Lucas, you came over to record that day, and you were just like, "How you doing, man?" And I'm just like, I fucking hated that song. It was just way.
Yeah, like
it made me angry. I didn't like it.
Scream was a little bit like an overload on the senses, and then I forgot what song it was where she was like singing about California.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, that was the
I
one
do hate that
prior,
song too, though.
California.
I don't like the California song.
And that's the
But,
thing. Like,
That's what he meant by Taylor Swifty vocal melodies.
well, that's why I mentioned it's like the
Which
album.
isn't a bad thing, but it is like kind of some stereotypical like pop melodies going on, which again,
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing, but it's not wrong to make that connection.
I did like Flesh Without Blood and the title track a lot. Art Angels. Like those two are probably the easiest songs to really. It was just fun music to listen to. But again, like with structure like that, I understand the appeal to it, both from like a psychological point and why people like music. People love repetition, and it allows the parts that aren't being repetitive to really stick out. But with a lot of these songs, it was difficult for me to like stay through the whole thing, but I did, and I enjoyed it. But I enjoyed it as much as if I were listening to the radio, I guess.
Okay.
Which, yeah, I guess that's my take.
All right.
I'm offended by your take, Jimmy. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh.
Hey,
I think the main thing is
it sounds like radio triple. Fuck that.
hey, it's just my perception. Honestly, I'll give that other album a listen and see if I like it.
Objectively, you are incorrect.
Wrong.
Cool. All right.
Incorrect take.
Yeah, I guess.
Incorrect subjectively.
Fuck my opinion, I guess.
Voices, you might like Voices a lot more because I certainly do. But again, it's just my opinion. Who am I?
Oh no, like it's fair. Like it's the same as if I gave you guys something and you just like shat all over it. But
You're opening the floodgates, Jimmy.
Jimmy,
I
I'm gonna
will
fucking murder you the next
Someone
time.
had to do it.
And while I murder you, I'm gonna be playing Venus Fly as loud as possible.
Don't open the floodgates before Caifanes, dude. You guys are gonna trash that shit. I know.
I do. I did like the last half of the album a lot more than the first half.
That seems like the consensus for some reason.
Yeah.
It was just a lot more streamlined, and I don't know, because with the first half, it's like, oh, this song's all right, and then the second song is like, eh, and then Scream comes on, and you're like, I don't know what to think anymore. And then the fourth song comes on, and you're like, oh, that's okay.
You're just wrong, though.
That's what happened with me too.
I'll take the stand of being wrong against the oppression. Rhymes is oppressing me.
Stay steadfast in your incorrect opinions, please.
You all want to move on to Caifanes 25th album?
Yeah. Do you want me to start again? Yes, I can.
If you want to, yeah, why not?
Okay, fine. You just grab my right here, Blue's Clues style. All right, what do I got? All right. Overall, I gave this a 6 of 10 because, like you said, no offense, but I didn't love it. But I found, in any album, you can usually find some good things, And I would say, okay, so is this a best of album, or is this like an album of theirs?
25-year anniversary album.
I gotta say that this is their most popular songs. So it's like, every album they have has like a different sound. Like their first album was very new wavy, and then Afuera was like a lot. Overall, they have that. Well, they have different style, kind of like throughout their career, 25 years of albums. They kind of keep the sound still kind of consistent with new wave and Kim Crimson like influences, but this is probably their most famous songs.
It doesn't sound like an album. You know what I mean? Like it definitely does sound like a best of taken from all their albums.
Wasn't this a live album? Did you guys listen to the live album or no?
No.
No? Okay, because I was totally listening to a live concert of them playing all these songs.
But anyway, weird. But in that sense, I was gonna I put that it's not super cohesive, but like that makes a lot more sense considering that these are a lot of tracks taken from different albums that they did. Like I'd have to listen to one of their actual albums to like know whether or not they're good at like making cohesive albums.
Yeah.
So I'll just pick
before you start, I'm just gonna say the reason I picked this, it's just because I couldn't pick between two albums, and there was elements about these two albums, mostly like two songs from each album that I really wanted you guys to listen to, and I just couldn't pick because one of them was like very new wavy and kind of just dark and cool, and the other one was very Latin.
Well, in the future, Royce, I would say that's against the rules because we're judging albums here, not best of albums.
Cool. Fair. I thought about it.
Lay it down.
I thought about it too, but to be fair, their albums, besides Afuera, they're also, all their songs are very different and all over the place.
But you know what? That's not the point, okay?
Okay.
The blonde hair is making you spicy.
Please continue. Please continue, Lauren.
Sorry. Just fucking with you, dude, but
No, it's all
anyway,
good.
Not that I don't mean it a little
Poor
bit, but
Royce.
It's all good.
I would say, like, honestly, as far as like music that I've personally been listening to recently, I've actually been getting more into like The Dead and Creedence Clearwater and Jimi Hendrix and stuff. So I've been like getting a little bit more into bands that are considered a little bit more jammy, if you will. And I would say a lot of these songs are kind of jammy. Like, they're a little bit heady, they're a little bit jammy, and there's a lot of guitar solos in there. But sometimes I thought that their songs are a little bit too guitar solo heavy. Like, I'm okay with like guitar solo heavy if it like is going in a certain direction. But at times I felt like it wasn't. Not that they weren't some spicy riffs, but it's not my like favorite style of music, honestly. It's just like guitar solos, even though they were good. And I think they did a lot of cool stuff with like, I was surprised in some tracks. I don't know which ones exactly, but I was surprised in some tracks that they were actually like doing some atmospheric stuff, which I'm always like too. So like some really cool atmospheric like intros and ethereal intros and stuff. It's cool. And then some of the tracks are just like straight up just like funky, which I like funky tracks. Like, I do in their own right. They're really cool. Yeah, I said it's not super cohesive as an album, but it's not really an album on its own, so that doesn't really track or like matter. But overall, yeah, there's like some cool stuff to take away. I would say that the vocals aren't my favorite. I don't know what the lyrics were though, so maybe they were cooler than like the actual vocals. I don't know. But yeah, no, it was like definitely a good listen. I like the weird synths in that last track. That was kind of like surprising to me because I feel like the rest of the tracks were like pretty guitar heavy and pretty much like kind of like some typical drum beats and stuff, but they had like some weird electronic drum beats and synths in that last track, which was cool. And I think my favorite song was Vientos, I think it was called, because they had like some slow tremolo picking in there, and I'm always a sucker for tremolo picking, honestly. Like, it's my favorite thing. So yeah, I guess that's my take on the album. And I guess if you were to apply this to the music you're making, like, I don't know. Honestly, I just like the tremolo picking. I guess we could take away from that for sure.
Who?
All right, cool. Well, I'll go next. We'll just keep a pattern going. So yeah,
I have to go last every time.
this is my first exposure to Caifanes, and you were, I mean, you're not wrong at all, Royce. It's definitely like they have a lot of new wave attributes to them, and they also have a lot of the cumbia and Latin influences. I've been becoming a little bit more comfy with new wave stuff. I've done enough goth nights to have it start to creep onto me, start to learn to appreciate that stuff. But yeah, I mean, the Latin influence, like, it's such a awesome blend. Like, I really enjoyed it. I was out cleaning the garage when I listened to the first half, you know. They started off with a lot of new wave stuff, and it was funny because they did the genre so damn well. Like, it was on the head, to the point where I was like, okay, I think this is some of the best stuff. It's consistent. When they started throwing you a couple of curveballs throughout the album, it changes a few times. I really like that. I like listening to these live albums. It's kind of cool. Maybe not every single time, but it's definitely, you know, I definitely enjoy it. So that was cool. Another thing about this band that I just get a kick out of, the song names, how they translate. You know, they just make it really interesting. You know, I lost my deer's eye and the human beast and stuff like it's. I don't know. It just made it really interesting, and it made listening to the album a lot more. Like, I started to. It kind of kickstart a little bit more imagination listening to the album. I started getting, you know, not just feeling it more, but also learning to appreciate where they were coming from. You know, like some of the acoustic versions that they did. They're a really talented band, and how they're able to bounce between, like, they don't necessarily bounce between genres. That's what's cool. It was a really nice blend, and it was like a nice fade into the different genres that they pulled off with that album. So generally, they're cool. I like them a lot. And like you guys were mentioning, this is kind of like the greatest. So they're playing a lot of their popular songs. They're from all different years, and like from like 88 to 95, it seems. around those times. Like it's just a collection of songs from them, and I think that's cool. You know, so I think if at any point someone like put it on, be like, oh yeah, I know these guys, and you know, it's tight. I liked it a lot. So it was just a good time for an album. It would be cool because I know enough Spanish to like understand one word in every other sentence or something like that, or maybe like 2 or 3 words in a sentence if I'm lucky. But I've never cared. Like I like listening to music in other languages because it helps me appreciate the music better. Like kind of just I don't have to worry about what people are saying. I can just hear the melody to it. So that was cool. Lucas, you want me to go next again?
Cool. Glad you liked it, dude.
Sure.
Yeah, of course. It's unique. Like I said, it's the first time hearing of them, so it's like, oh, it's nice to know that they exist, you know?
Yeah. Go ahead, Lucas.
Okay. Caifanes is pretty cool, man.
Right.
I think I like them better than Café Tacuba.
Oh, yeah.
And part of it is probably, I guess if you were going to look at thematic things, it is a little jarring when bands like can drastically change their sound over time, but it wasn't too bad, at least listening to the, best of kind of songs and whatnot. They definitely have definitely when you said The Cure, I was like, all right, I'm going to try and not like bias myself for some of these other songs. But yeah, I could totally see that. Like The Cure was like, you could definitely hear a lot of those like kind of synth melodies and things like that in the background. And then you mentioned like King Crimson, and I think it's more like at least in my mind, they capture like kind of they capture like this. No worries. They capture the spirit of like King Crimson, but they definitely have their own sound too.
Yeah.
I guess when I first listened to like all these collections of songs, I put it on at work because the journeyman I was working with loved them. I was like, hey man, do you know who Caifanes is? And he's like, oh yeah. Yeah. So he started jamming. So the first song I listened to was Afuera. So and it's still my favorite song. It's a really good song.
Yeah.
So and good vocal melodies in it too as well.
Yeah.
Like fairly simple, but it's just like exactly what it needed. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's the whole album I enjoyed a lot. Just as far as being all their popular songs and whatnot, and having different, regional influences as well. If you like Caifanes, I feel like La Mano Negra is kind of close to that. Not exactly the same, but it's kind of the same, like in that style of like late 80s. They're kind of like the Clash of Spain. That's like the easy, route that I give to people when I try and explain La Mano Negra and stuff like that. Is like they're like the Clash, and Caifanes kind of sounds like The Cure, except they sound a little more like, I don't know, man, like Tool a little bit in some parts, like as far as like rhythmic patterns go. But again, that's just like like certain regional influences, and I don't know, they definitely got their own sound though. It's pretty cool. So
yeah, I definitely wrote down that they remind me of like The Cure and Echo and the Bunnymen for a few songs.
Mm-hmm.
Just like that era.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So I guess I'll go next. Keep the same thing, the same pattern.
All right.
So Caifanes is like probably the most important like Mexican Latin rock band in my opinion.
Okay.
And what's like very interesting about them, I mean, it's first of all, they're unique. And when you have a country like, most Latin American countries have a really strong ability when it comes to culture and music. So radio play and just the music industry in general, and just just people in general, don't stuff like this is not well received. Like just rock in general is not received. Although there's a lot of bands now, but at that time that was kind of like the pioneering era. There was bands like Maná, it was El Silencio from Spain, and Soda Stereo is credited to being like one of the first ones to ever do any rock music. Just because it's so rich in music itself. There's cumbia, there's norteñas and banda, and that's just like Mexico, right? And there's mariachi, and there's so many other different regional kind of genres that it's just kind of hard to break into an industry, especially at the time. Mexico is like a very monopolized industry in TV and music. So if you want any radio play at all, you kind of have to like morph yourself into the industry, and they kind of achieve that. It's before internet, before anything. So you kind of rely to make a record, especially in a country like Mexico. You rely on having to really appeal to producers and big record labels. So Caifanes, included, La Negra Tomasa was really there, which is that straight up cumbia song, right? That straight up just wasn't like bossa nova. What brought him into fame is just really interesting that a lot of people don't know that song is from Caifanes. Like if it comes on the radio, people don't really even know that that this is played by a rock band. So it's pretty interesting. You'll see videos of them live at like a talk show, and everybody's just kind of like scratching their heads, like, what the fuck are we looking at? It's like his hair, kind of like The Cure, and it's just kind of interesting. And I grew up listening to them, so they're a pretty important band that shaped pretty much my taste. When you're like, that's your language, you tend to gravitate to things that are in your language, and just so that's pretty much what I really liked, is that I've always been attracted to rock music, guitar, drum kind of stuff, but they were so original and so true to their own culture. They integrated all these Mayan rhythms and all this mariachi music without in Mexico that would kind of feel you're one or the other. You like rock or you like regional music, and they kind of morphed it, and they kind of appealed to everybody in that way. And what I really love about them, it's the singing. I just from where I come, I grew up listening to like what my mom listened to, or my dad, and they listen to a lot of old, very vocal or like led music and melodic music, and especially like stuff like mariachi and Juan Gabriel. I feel like he has so much influence from this style of vocalizations and singing, and he incorporates it into this new wave style. And on the first album, and then on the second album, like I feel like it's his voice and it's his lyrics that kind of keep the band. It's so every song is so different from each other, but it keeps it so no matter what they do, it keeps it consistent. Like it's Caifanes. I feel it's pretty much all because of him, because that the band likes to venture into different styles and different rhythms and everything, and his voice is so on point, and so it's simple and just melodically catchy, etc., but it's just so I would say just on point at all times. Like, and just the lyrics on this, I know the language barrier, it's kind of hard, but you're mentioning the song names, Nick. A lot of these songs are, based on folk, like Mexican, like brujeria, which is kind of witchcraft, and just old like cultural, especially like there's that song Ojo de Venado. Like there's people in Mexico who believe in brujeria and stuff like that carry like a deer eye, or it's kind of like a rabbit's foot. So he's talking about how he lost his fucking eye, his ojo de venado. He lost it, and I don't know who's gonna protect me now. You know what I mean? And he just goes into all these like kind of really cool like stuff. And there's other songs like Aquí no es así, which talks about how, you know, like the whole world sees Mayans and sacrifice, you know, as something like savage, but he sings about it, about how it's basically so much love for their God, so much love for their culture, for their God, for the guy who gives them water. They have so much love that they sacrifice for it, you know? And then he uses it, you know, and adds it to, you know, kind of more with relationship and love and all this stuff. So it makes it so deep. And so, you know, that's why, you know, you mentioned, you know, how you work with somebody who knows them and he loves them because they just really, really hit you, you know, and it's one of those cultural things, you know, like you kind of wouldn't understand unless you kind of grew up with it and saw how different it was as you're growing up from anything else, and how it introduces you to other things, you know. And you know, one of the reasons I didn't want to pick one album is just because I kind of wanted to showcase his vocals and lyricism, and how in every song, regardless, you can still tell it's Caifanes. So I think for what I would take for our band is that we have such different songs and such different rhythms and changes and all throughout our songs, and no matter where the songs go, it frees everybody else too, like vocally, to if everything's just kind of really has a characteristic or you just kind of like a style, if that makes any sense. You know, and Grimes has the same thing. You know, Grimes is also super on point with lyrics. Like, no matter what she does, you still know it's Grimes. You still always kind of know it's going to be Grimes. So I could talk about this band forever just because, you know, it's like a personal favorite, but objectively, I do agree with a lot of things. You know, a lot of the synthesizers and, you know, the drums are pretty basic, you know, and there is a lot of, you know, flaws to it. And to an extent, there's songs that are very like new wavy, and some songs are, you know, just don't really kind of hit the spot. And you know, listen to their albums, there's a lot of weak songs too, but overall, you know, I think it's a pretty good fucking band. I mean, I've been listening to it for a long time, and they kind of, you know, got me into a lot of music just because of how diverse.
Your take on it, like, makes me think about it in a different way, because it exposes like how forms of you listen to things, because I feel like maybe if I knew the language and I knew like some context culturally, I would have heard that album in like mostly a different way. And I wish that I like knew enough of the language to like be able to decipher some of those lyrics now, like be able to tell like how influential they were as far as like cultural significance goes, because I was just like I didn't know that what the lyrics were. Like, I was just listening purely based on sound, which is something interesting in its own right, but like, I don't know, your take really for me exposes just like how you grew up, or like what languages you were familiar with, and like what that cultural significance is to you as well.
Yeah, no, and I understand, like, absolutely understand, like, it's not, you know, it's just not something for everybody. Like, his voice is one of those voices that you hate or you love, and that's just the truth. Like, no matter who you are, you know, I know people that grew up in the same condition, you know, same place as me, and have the same taste in music, and they don't like Caifanes as much. So it's not, it's, you know, all the opinions are valid. I guess my take, I would really love if people could really understand like their lyrics, you know, and even if you go and translate them, it's not the same effect, but you know, it's cool, but don't feel like, you know, it's for sure like a take. There's a lot of weaknesses in the band, but you know, I grown to like them. You know, it's kind of like with Grimes. You know, a lot of the first half of the album, I mean, most of us were like, ugh. But you know, once you grow to like the style, you grow to like the artist. I'm sure to you is like, you know, it feels a lot different. So, yeah.
Cool.
Jimmy time.
Jimmy.
Oof. Okay. Curse of going last means that I have to try to find something that hasn't already been said. Be prepared to hear the words the cure again. So yeah, basically. Also, sorry, I'm collecting my thoughts. My blood sugar is low. So yeah, this album made me feel kind of nostalgic. Just because it reminded me of like in Belen, the Catholic Church always has these like fiestas every year. Was someone talking? Anyway,
Please continue, Jimmy.
okay. So in Belen, they would have these fiestas every year, and they would have like these like Spanish bands play, and they would play like some stereotypical like what you hear on the Spanish stations, like when you're driving, and then they would play like Freebird, the next song, and it just kind of reminds me of like those two feelings combined into one, like just really heavy 80s to 90s guitar, like progressive rock type stuff. The guitar really got me. Like I love the guitar melodies on a lot of the songs, especially like the first two songs in the album. And the bass carried everything in a really interesting way, because that's like what I always remember with like a lot of Spanish music that I hear is just that like bass line of boom, 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 keeping it like throughout the song. And like this band really knew how to like spice that up while also keeping like the obvious like Latin American vibe going on. And I'm also very partial towards like Latin style beats, like and like I don't know. I really enjoyed this album. It just gave me good vibes overall. I understand at this point as much Spanish as I do like Japanese, which is not a lot at all. But just like being surrounded by the language my entire life, like start to pick up on words and like what phrases mean and that kind of stuff. So I pulled out some of the lyrical stuff out of this to the point where there was some contextual lines, and it was really interesting to just really jump into this. Like I'll probably end up listening to this album again.
Nice.
But
Fuck yeah, Jimmy.
Fuck yeah, Jimmy.
Fuck yeah, dog.
Jimmy's takes.
I forgive you for the Taylor Swift comment.
I don't forgive you for that.
Lord does it.
Sorry. No forgiveness. I don't give a shit.
I was trying really hard to just not say, oh yeah, it sounds like The Cure with Latin beats.
Well, you just fucking failed, dude.
Well, that's always kind of like the the Caifanes hater, like that's always a thing. It's like, oh, you mean the Mexican Cure? Like that's always gonna be a thing. But
Yeah.
I thought the Mexican Cure was Vapor Road.
No, I think I definitely see, like, because you mentioned that a lot when you suggested the album, but I see how they differed in their own right. You know what I mean? It was like
There's
they did
actually
the
only
same.
one song that reminded me of The Cure.
But oh yeah. But also, Jimmy, there's so many like Japanese bands that are versions of American bands, and I don't want to mention any, but there's a bunch of
A lot of fighting words going around.
Oh no, that's
the first
that's what I love. I
record, we're
love
just ready to
comparing
throw
music
down.
to other bands from other countries. It kind of just puts things into perspective for like their place in the music scene.
yeah.
That's true. That's very true.
It's like
All
music is a shared
is
language
other
or something
pieces of
crazy.
music are reached.
Rough stuff. So wait, was everyone on Caifanes?
Yeah, I think
Moving on to
Feels.
the much awaited. I would love to fucking do a deep dive, but unfortunately, I really don't have time, I guess. But oh my god, thank you so much for suggesting this album, Nick, because I've never listened to a full Animal Collective album, and it was transcendental. Well, I felt like the first time I've listened to it probably 4 times in the last week, and I felt like I was fucking astral projecting out of my body every single time. Because it was so goddamn good. I love it so much. Like I literally like making plans to take some LSD and listen to this because I feel like my entire life would probably be figured out if I did. So I'm going to do a little bit more of a deep dive than a quick summary on this one because it's just too much. It's too much to just say a couple sentences on. Like, that's ridiculous.
That's fair.
I'll give you the quick and easy first, and then I'll tell you a couple. So, oh my god, I gave this a 10 of 10, and I never give anything. I gave it a fucking 10.
Oh my god.
That's my boys and co.
It's starting to sound like a pitchfork review.
Shut the fuck up, this is my time. This is my time.
Go ahead.
Pitchfork. Royce just left. He's letting you know.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just being a dick.
I actually wrote 10 of 10. Wow, I never give anything 10. And one thing that, because like I said, I take notes on every song, and one word that kept coming up over again and again was the word cadence, because I feel like every single song, like, whether it's the vocals, the drums, like whatever element it is, it always has such a specific cadence that can't really be replicated in my opinion. Like it's I don't know, cadence. Think about it. And let's see, I wrote this note, but I think it was mostly about one particular song, so I need to make sure like I mention it. Okay. Oh, it was Grass.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that song
That's a
that
heavy
has
one.
all these little like screams in it. It's like, ah, ah. but I was like writing up, and like this phenomenon happens in a few of the songs of this album, but specifically on Grass, I wrote like it feels like all like I don't know, in life I guess you go through like a lot of these times where it's just kind of like a little bit dull and like the same thing, the monotonous thing, but every once in a while you get these like little bits of emotion that are like really extreme. And I felt like in this song there were like he did a really good job reflecting that. It was like all these like little bits of extreme emotion just like distilled in one little like vocal run or whatever, which was like extremely impressive to me because I'm like, wow, I can really relate to that in my own life. Like, that's the fucking human experience right there, is treasuring moments of emotion or feeling that are just, like, way the fuck up there. And I felt that to me. That, and then as far as, like, all the vocal layers, like, so many fucking vocal layers. Just so many. That just, like,
many vocal layers.
each other. But a lot of the time, yeah. And a lot of times, to me, you know, it's like the same person's vocals layered over each other, but it almost sounds like he's having a conversation with himself.
Okay.
Sure. Sorry, Margaret's asking if you can ask for my food. Yeah, but like, yeah, it almost sounds like a conversation with yourself, or at the same time, in that like same vein, it sounds like a thought process, but you can like hear the thought process happening, if that makes sense.
Right.
Which is really fucking cool, because I feel like a lot of the goal of any piece of music, any album, whatever, is to capture the human condition that you're in, and this does such an extremely good job of that I can hear exactly the place that he's in life, like. Even if it's just because I maybe have been in that place or am in that place or whatever, but like I know I relate so much to it in like a human fucking way, and I feel like a lot of the reason that he's able to do that is because in this album and a lot of Animal Collective's music is like there's so many the percussion that's going on, and there's like different layers of percussion, but he'll keep like a repetitive layer of something, whether it's percussion or synth or whatever, keep that repetitive layer and then take some elements out of it, bring them back in at like fucking full volume at some point. And because of that, I don't know, just like that repetition is like so addictive sometimes, especially in like a lot of vocal runs and stuff like that. It just gets so fucking addictive. You're like, oh, I want to hear that again, like over and over and over again. Like, sorry, man, I'm just like, honestly, the first song, did you see the words? So good. Like the let's take our shoes off shit, like, goddamn, dude. Like, and at the same time, like, lyricism like that, which is like so simple. It's like a very simple thought you have sometimes mixed with all these other like thoughts. Like, let's take our shoes off, get comfortable. Like, I don't know, that's such a like universal experience. But I really respect when we can like put these universal experiences into words and put them into songs. Like, that's honestly a really good goal to have. Another person really in the song Cellophane, where the main lyric is, didn't I do it for you? Like, what a fucking simple like thought that everyone in the fucking world's had at some point or other. That, like, let's take our shoes off. Like, yeah, I don't know. I gave 10 of 10. Goddamn.
That's a big one. Yeah, I'm glad you like it that much. I'm glad you like that. That's cool. Because
Gave it a 10? Is
Mic drop.
that what you said?
this was a everybody hear me? Is everything right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yep.
Gotcha.
Cool. The drive that I found, I was like 18 and just moved out, and this one dude, you know, we'd been hanging out for a little bit, and he's like, here's a hard drive with all the music I have. I have like 100 gigs of music or something like that, and that hard drive had a lot to do with, you know, how like stuff that was definitely influenced. So with this one, this wasn't the first thing
Oh,
I heard.
it
was just insane. I mean,
you're cutting out.
that song. Oh.
Wait. What song? You were cutting out. Say it again.
Oh, he's frozen.
Can you hear me now? It's being kind of spotty. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much.
I hear you.
Okay. All right, cool. Anyway, so it was so the song that I first heard was called Watercrushes. It's off a different album, and it was just so much like I'd never heard anything like that. And one of the
Is he gone again?
Hey,
It's
Nick.
gone. Rip.
Nacho!
Nacho.
had a full band for a while.
We're getting to some. Oh, there we are.
You cut out for like a full minute, brother.
Hell yeah, brother.
All right. I guess the internet's being used so much right now.
Someone's using all the bandwidth.
Let me try something. Mm-hmm.
So what was that song?
Is this better now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me now? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, sorry. So it was called Water Curses, and it just has a very flashy effect to it, and it's really Animal Collective. The vocals are all over the place. You know, he's doing the weird yippy sounds and stuff like that you hear a lot in Feels too. But it was something I'd never really heard before, so I found the album Feels. You know, it was one of the ones I had on the computer, and that's the thing. Like, I didn't really get too far into the album until a few years later, just because there was so much going on. It's not that long of an album, but by the time I started really listening to it, I think it's one of the more important albums to me, because it's a solid reminder that, you know, you can go off the beaten path and kind of do some cool stuff if you want to, but you can also always just say fuck convention and do something insane. And their songwriting's incredible too. You know, with all the crazy stuff they're doing, they're actually making something tangible, depending on the song. So I kind of just learned that, you know, there's something that, you know, I was really interested in the music, and I really dig the music, and I started listening to their other albums. And because I mentioned to one of my friends when I went to Crass, the audio school, I was like, yeah, you know, I dig the album Feels, and he's like, you gotta check these guys out. And he gave me everything else, and I just kind of approved of them from there. Let's see. Banshee Beat is a really important song to me. That's just, it's very calm in a sea of really chaotic songs. Of course, there's songs like Bees is another one that's really soothing. Like that. The first time I heard Bees, I don't really hear songs that like lull me to sleep a lot of the time. That's definitely one of them, until he starts the tuba sound with his voice. Yeah, just in general, that's always been an important one. Just because Animal Collective is pretty far off from what I was used to listening to at the time too, and it still kind of is. Like, it weirds me out that I'm an Animal Collective fan. So, yeah. It's that's the thing. Like, I just wouldn't expect it, but it's that far out music. It's crazy. I mean, it makes you, you know, they really are true to the name. You know, it feels like all of a sudden I'm like a chipmunk or something, running around. Especially, did you see the words? There's a unofficial music video on YouTube that someone put it to an old cartoon, and it's perfect. But yeah, that's just a general take. Again, I could go deeper into it, but just in general, it's a fun album, and it's challenging, but it's also very playful too. So, all right, Lucas.
Sure. Yeah, this is a really good album. I liked it a lot.
Nice.
Did we lose Lauren? Sorry.
Huh?
I think we lost Lauren.
Yeah, we did. I can't swipe. Uh-oh.
Okay, sorry. I mean, do we keep going or?
Let's.
Well, she did get her take. So
Message.
Well, let's. Oh, she's back. She's back.
Sorry, my phone like overheated or some shit. I don't know what was going on.
What kind of phone is it?
iPhone.
iPhone.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well,
As
I
is
was trying to check messages because we got a message, and it just like fucking, I don't know, imploded itself. So.
All right. So, Lucas, you keep going.
Like I said, it's a really good album. This is another one of those albums where I'm like, how do they replicate that live?
Yeah.
do they? Like, you know, because I've never seen them live, but you know, there's a lot of vocal layering and everything, and a lot of different like. That's the thing. There's so much like production going on that like I can't tell if there's like so many more multiple instruments or if it's something that could be done with like just having a bunch of like, you know, electronic stuff like synths and samples and whatnot, like tied up with drum pads or something like that. You know, there's just so much stuff going on, but it is really cool to take something that's like really atmospheric in a lot of ways and just crazy and out there and weave something cohesive with it. You know, because some of the songs aren't all that complicated, but there's like so much layering going on that it's like really, it's like, I don't know, it's really hard to achieve that.
Yeah.
It's important to note that, like, I don't know, in my opinion, I feel like whatever sound you're going for, you got to lean into it. Like, you really just got to lean into it. So, in this case, it's like compared to last week when we were talking about that Guided by Voices album, it's like they really leaned into that lo-fi, like no production type of sound. But in this case, Animal Collective really leaned into the like composure production type of sound. So like whatever sound it is you're going for, you just like got to lean into it real hard and go with it, not be like, I don't know, iffy on what you're doing, because then it's just gonna sound like you're confused. And it doesn't sound like either bands are confused. Like they're completely leaning into what they're going for. And like you got to give them fucking props for that. So
there's a lot of like I guess when it comes to composing in general, decision making is like pretty key, because like anyone can be like disappointed with what they create, but at some point you have to say, okay, it's good enough. You know, but when you create stuff like that, you really, I don't know what the process is, you know? It's like,
I don't know either.
Did they have that like coming into it, or did that grow organically, which is my hunch? But then afterwards, did they do a bunch of stuff in the studio and then realize, oh, let's just do that live too, you know?
That's like what I was saying with Grimes. I was like, I feel like a lot of this kind of sometimes electronic production stuff or poppy stuff is like a lot of intuition, because, you know, it's like, when you stop throwing paint on the canvas, it's just intuition. It's like, you got to know when it's done.
I mean, to be fair, that's kind of like how me and Jimmy generally write, I think, anyway. I know I write that way a lot because I'm almost never satisfied with something until finally, like, I have to call it quits, and then I'm like, oh, you know what, that is okay. So
that's
like, organically.
That's how I feel in any art form, because, I mean, a lot of times it's just like, I mean, I'll start something, I'm like, this is a good idea, and it gets too busy, and it gets too busy because I'm like, oh, well, it's not done, and I add too much to it, and then it's like, man, this is a little bit too busy, and I don't know, it's just like, honestly, always finding a balance in between what's adding too much and what's like just enough, and what just complements everything else.
Yeah, that's
the hundreds of pretty styles.
Kind of my thoughts on this album is like, how did they arrive to this is good? You know, was it a long process?
I know what you mean.
I feel like it would be, you know, but anyway, it's a good album. So,
I have a story about that.
It's interesting listening to an album as a listener, as a spectator, and thinking about maybe what the artist themselves thinks about the album, because I don't know, like some of the stuff I put out, you have people being like, oh, well, this is really good, and you're like, really? Well, I think that it could be better. Like, as the artist, you're honestly a lot of times just like, well, I think it could be better, but I don't know. It's weird. It's fucking weird.
So creating art is you're never satisfied with your own product.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's that aspect of self-criticism, but you know, that always drives you to do better, you know, but at some point it can be bad because you need to say that's enough and that's okay, you know.
It's always weird to like make the decision to say something is finished. Honestly, it's like fucking weird as hell. But it's like a huge relief to say something is finished. I don't know. I feel like if you yourself, to me, it's about like making sure that you've said what you wanted to say. And if you've said what you wanted to say and you say you're done, then that's okay. Like, whether or not it's perfect, nothing is perfect. But if you've said, like, the universal truth, you've said, like, what you wanted to say, then, like, you've done your fucking job at the end of the day.
Mhm.
If you've gotten that emotion across, I guess.
I
Yeah,
can agree
I
with
get
that.
that.
You think Da
I feel
Vinci
like
had 5 dozen unfinished Fruity Loop files on his computer?
I have about that much on my computer.
Samesies. Like
Terabyte.
All right.
2012.
Royce, go ahead. Or actually, did you go? No, you didn't.
Usually
I
it's
have
Royce.
to go last.
Yeah, go
That's-
ahead, Jimmy.
Everyone
You
shoved me
want to
into
go
the last.
last? No.
Oh, go now?
Yes.
Okay. I like this album too. It made me sleepy, and I have severe insomnia, so that's good.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It definitely reminds me of the same vibe of like a LSD come down. You know, everything is still like frothy in your cognition, but you understand what's in the froth.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I felt like not really a come down, but I felt like the trajectory was like a fucking LSD trip. Not particularly the come down, but I feel like Purple Bottle was like the peak of my trip, and then the rest of it was like.
My trips are
Purple
usually
Bottle.
more like crazy, and then the entire come down for like 12 hours before I finally get my eyes crusted shut. And it definitely makes, because, sorry, I'm reading my notes now. I don't know what I was saying because I was like walking and typing at the same time, so it's a mess. It definitely makes sense that this has been one of Lauren's favorites, because you said your favorite band was Vampire Weekend.
I said it's one of my all-time favorite bands, just because like I feel like they've undergone a really significant turn in the past few years, and I respect that.
No, yeah. And with this band, I definitely get a lot of the same, like that kind of stereotypical, not stereotypical because indie's not that stereotypical, but like that indie vibe. It's almost post indie, you know? Like it's got all of the elements of that, like garage, like A-punk type, like happy drivenness, but it's really mixed up like a Picasso painting.
Interesting that you say that, though, because one of the things I wrote down is that in some of the tracks, there's this weird tone of like a demented beauty. Like it's really pretty, but like it glitches out.
Yeah. Like I agree with that, and it also almost gives me like a theatrical vibe. Like this could have been the soundtrack to like an international film channel movie,
Mhm.
like some see late at night on 4 a.m. on IFC,
Mhm.
and just black and white, grimy.
Right.
Shit.
And I really like that. I love like thematic stuff, and like that. Going back to Grimes, that's one of the things that I actually really liked about that. Is it's just I love themes, I love making a story, I love setting a vibe,
Yeah.
and then making you sit and think about it. And this album definitely made you sit and think, like, what did I just listen to?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's got like a going back to like the weird like live theatery vibe. It gives me almost like a good news for people who like bad news.
Okay. Yeah, I see that.
With like color, I guess.
Yeah.
And same like a little bit to a less degree, but more about the execution. Pretty Odd from Panic at the Disco.
Okay, I didn't really listen to that much. So.
Yeah, me neither. But like whenever I did listen to it, it definitely gave me like if you imagine like a live theater and you imagine like the props hanging down from the ceiling, like cardboard props, just like flowing across. That's how a lot of the new voices and instruments sounded to me, except in a really like well done foggy way.
Okay.
And I don't know. At the same time, I was pretty tired. I think I was coming off of like a 30-hour day or something because my sleep
wow.
schedule's all messed up.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that helped with a lot of the imagery.
Yeah.
Color is interesting to describe that. Like, I definitely feel that, like, color. Lots of color. And,
Yeah, and that's
just
one of the
basically like a
descriptors.
acid trip, but yeah.
Yeah. And like color is one of the descriptors I always use. And to be honest, I didn't hear the lyrics because, as I've told you guys before, like a few times, I hear the voice as a melody and an instrument before I even can like recognize what words are being said.
That's one of the most
And
effective things about this album, though, is that a lot of the times they're not actual lyrics. It's just like some sort of melody. And I wrote that down too. Like, it reminds me that the voice is like an instrument when you want it to be, when you make it one. But I think one of the things they do really well is like there are little lyrics that stick out to you that you can hear really well, and then the rest of them you don't know what the fuck they're saying. But the ones that do stick out to you are like so universal that you're like, it really like sticks in your head.
no, yeah, like
Like
I enjoyed
saying,
the lyrics. Well, not the lyrics. I enjoyed the vocals, I should say, because I don't even remember a single word.
I think it was the first song, but the only lyrics that I could actually hear what they were saying was tangled up in arms and legs, and I was like, wow, that's such a like descriptive, visual, like universal thing to say.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, did you see the words? I remember that.
Yeah, did you see the words?
But yeah, that's essentially my take. I'm sure I could go on more about color of songs and stuff, but
that, and just like, I don't know, for this album, it's like color wrapped up in the idea that you know, they have these like slow build-ups, but they also have like these, like, they just like throw these like intense sounds on you every once in a while where you're like, oh, that's how it feels like when I'm going through life being super normal, but then all of a sudden I'm like super in love with someone, or like I'm having like the crazy experience of my life, like I'm in a really weird country or whatever. Like, I don't know, that's how like a lot of these songs feel to me. It's just like you're going through life normally and all of a sudden this like crazy experience hits you and you're like, man, I wonder if I'm ever gonna feel that deeply again. Like, that's how the songs like come across me, which is like super fucking impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like stamps of a certain amount of brain chemicals that just make you reminisce about, or can't imagine.
I guess the best word to describe it, I just like, is ephemerality. Like, it does a very good job at capturing what ephemerality feels like.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah.
Cool. Good takes. Good takes, Royce.
This album fucking sucks, dude.
Fuck you, right? Like, are you kidding me right now? What's your address, dude? No reason. I just want to know what your address is. No reason. What is it? No, seriously, what's your address?
No, well, no, I like this album. It was, it's not typically something I would listen to.
Blasphemy.
Just because of the initial kind of folky feel that I got from it. You know, that style of voice to me is just so overplayed by this time now. Gotcha. So like going back to this whole like like this whole fucking like really indie kind of stuff, like it's really like hard to get into it at first.
Yeah, Beach Boys stuff. Yeah.
But then the chorus for Grass dropped, and it changed everything.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Once that dropped,
I'm gonna fucking murder you.
Was that before the Fire Nation attacked?
Yeah, no. Well, I'm try and focus on the negative things just because everybody talks about the positives. Not that
What
there's
is wrong with you? What is wrong with you?
not that there's a
Hey,
lot.
we need some
It's a good album.
contrast.
It's a good album, and it's like I appreciate it so much more because I went and listened to other Animal Collective stuff, and it just shows the wide range these guys have. These guys are, holy shit. But no, I like the album, but just I guess more subjectively, I don't like the style. The drumming and all these things. Just I guess I would say like maybe it's like sonically is just not what I like. What I enjoy, but I can appreciate it. I can totally appreciate it.
Hey Royce, I'm about to destroy all your drums. Are you ready?
No, I mean I can appreciate the creativity and what they're trying to do. Like, of course, like I'm not not objectively putting them down. I think just subjectively, it's not something that I would listen to. Just when it comes to taste.
Oh no, I'm just joking.
But I think it's mostly because of the voice. The vocals are not something I would like, and because of those reasons. Maybe if I listened to it back then, I would really like it. But I'm gonna get to where after listening to it and getting adjusted to it, I started really, really appreciating a lot of the songs that I normally appreciate, And I think I think I listened to it while riding my bike, and I don't know why that didn't do it. I think I was too distracted.
Okay.
And then I listened to it just kind of like washing dishes, and it really hit me. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it was one of those things where, like, it just kind of it was one of those things, like, I guess the title of the album is pretty accurate because you kind of have to feel it, and it's I suffer from the whole, like, emo syndrome, like things have to be sad and depressing at first for me to, like, really like them. I don't like a lot to have music, and it happens with like I love pretty much. I like anything really. Like I can listen to anything, but I'm an avid listener, so I like to listen to things until I really understand them, and that was a really good experience with this album because, like I said, objectively, right away, I was like, this is fucking, this is all over the place. This is cool. This is creative. But I need to really take it in. I need to take it in. And
it's a big pill to swallow, man. There's a lot of going on.
Just stylistically, it wasn't my cup of tea. But once I got into it, I really, really got into it. So that I like those kind of albums. I have plenty of those albums. Talk, one of those albums. I love Talk, like fucking other albums that are super fucking poppy and shit, and never get into that other one, that Spirit of Eden, and eventually, after actually feeling it and being on the mood for it, I got really into it. So it's one of those albums that time's gonna go by and I'm gonna understand it more and more and more and more. I just
totally. On that note, I would say, like, the first time I listened to it, I was like, what the fuck? And then I was like, I'm gonna have to listen to this a good 3 or 4 times before I have anything like intellectual or like cohesive or like concise to say about it, because it's one of those albums where you're like, yeah, I gotta listen to this shit a few times because it's a lot to take in.
It's cool. Like, and you guys were talking about how it feels sort of like a intuitive album. I think it's a very well crafted album, and I think that says more about them than saying this is something that kind of just, I mean, I think it's part of both, like any, you guys as being musicians, that nothing is just kind of like comes out at once. But I think this album was like extremely like edited and thought about, and you know what I mean? I think it was constant hours of, just constant hours in the studio, just really, really crafting this sound and really crafting the structure of these songs. And at the beginning, it kind of felt like forced but weird, and that's another thing that I was kind of like, well, it feels like you're trying to be weird, and to me, it didn't feel intuitive at first.
Gotcha.
Then after getting into it a bit more, I kind of felt like there is a lot of, depending on the song too, I think there's a lot of feeling into it too. especially comparing it to like other stuff that they do, which I believe is a little more crafted. But overall, I think it just speaks more about them if you look at it a way that I feel like it was crafted. You know, I feel like they really sat down and crafted all these songs, and everything was a decision. You know, everything they did was like a really good decision. You know, like
nice.
You know, they really thought about everything and dynamics and everything. You know, how it works together and how it works with each other in the album. So it makes for a really good, you know, it makes for a really good piece of art more than like an enjoyable. I mean, it is enjoyable after you get into it, but you know, more than like a right away, like, ooh, like, you know, kind of catches you right away kind of album. It's just more like prose. And I think I appreciate it more because of that.
Nice. No, I like that perspective because I'll send you guys the link after we're done with this. But one of their first big festival shows is on YouTube. And it's just the two main guys, and they're playing acoustic guitars. And Royce, you're definitely right. Like they came from, like, and Lucas mentioned too, like, oh, where did they come from? Where did they start out with? Watch this YouTube video and you'll see where they started. They started from scratch. Let me put it that way. It was a very, very rough draft that they started with.
Yeah.
So as a band, they grew.
One more thing I want to add is you know, the second part of the album is very, very, very relaxing to me. Like, you know, and another thing is, at first it felt like a straight up like yoga listening, you know, like experience. So like, so relaxing. And but I think that's what got me into the album the most. It was that kind of relaxation. It's almost like a hopeful feel. You know, I need to expand myself with those kind of feelings, you know, because I'm a very subjective listener. I think when I listen to things, I'm all subjective at first. Like I need to feel it, and like I said, I'm always like I always gravitate to things that are like sadder and depressing, and just I don't know. That's what I go for. So when something's like hopeful, I'm like, ugh, it's corny. Get away from me. It's not like talk to me, but I can't do it because it's just like I don't want to be happy. Like I don't want to feel that. You know? That's just the way I am.
That's why I like some notes. I feel like it's the full fucking spectrum, honestly. Like it's all the cycles, which is a lot to pack it in. And I've been okay. Whose shit is echoing or making noises?
Check.
Okay. Anyway, maybe it's mine. Anyway, I've been putting this album on while I like watch or art stuff, and I don't know. It's interesting how listening to certain music can sway whatever you're doing artistically. Because I'm like, man, whatever art I make while I listen to this is definitely directly influenced like by whatever feelings it's giving me.
Cool. Sorry, I muted everybody because there was a bunch of echo. I couldn't hear anything. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. No, overall, I really enjoy the album, but I just had to put it out there, just my subjective opinion, because.
Cool.
So who is suggesting new albums for this week?
So it's two. So it's Jimmy and Lucas.
Jimmy and Lucas, what do you got for us?
Francis the mute.
No, you can suggest it next week. I was gonna go with Mr. Gnome, Heave Your Skeleton.
Who is it?
Mr. Gnome.
Oh, I remember whenever back in ceremonies you told us we sounded like Mr. Gnome one time, and then I like
yeah, a little bit.
And I was like, God damn, that's a good compliment. Jesus.
Yeah, they're definitely. I don't know. I really like Mr. Gnome a lot.
Me too. Okay. Which album?
Okay. I would want to suggest Heave Your Skeleton as long as not everyone's listened to it, because their most famous is like House of Circles, but the album before that I'd rather like everyone take a listen to.
Let's do it. And Jimmy?
Okay.
Unmute yourself. Okay, rip to Jimmy.
He's frozen.
Oh, there he goes. What album, Jimmy?
The
Jimmy.
2/3. Everyone stop saying my name, please. Because I keep getting it late and all I hear is jit, jit, jit. Sorry, my phone froze up. The 2013 album from Uchu Conbini.
All right, you'll send it in the chat, and then we'll see
Yeah.
what it is.
I'll send it.
I don't know what the fuck you're saying.
No, it's okay. Sounds good.
That's a good album, Jimmy.
All right.
All right.
The Gnome
Yes.
and some Japanese band from Jimmy.
Mhm.
Why'd you pick that? Why'd you pick that one, Jimmy? Just a little context.
Just trying to go for something less hard, but still, it's like on the tapping scale, it's on the Lucas level of complicated.
Cool.
But on a
I don't know about
compositional
that.
scale, it's really pretty, really flowery. I think there's some vocals in it that just really pair well with it. Given it's in Japanese, but it's still very pretty.
Cool.
Sweet.
I'm excited.
All right. Well, any last notes from anyone to add before we hop off this?
I don't think so.
Good talk.
We still ended up
Yeah.
having a 2-hour video.
Yeah, 2-hour video.
Yeah.
Good job, guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we cut this down?
Roy said 1 hour.
Hey, you shoot for the moon, and you end up in the stars. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you
Right.
gotta at least have a spaceship to do it.
Yeah, lefty, loosey, righty, tighty.
Cool.
Give me the LSD and I'll be on my own spaceship.
Dang.
To you guys, and also anyone, listen to Time Crisis, please, 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 please listen to Time Crisis podcast, please.
Oh.
Whoa, I was about to say, you played
Oh.
Time Crisis, not
And
Time Crisis.
King of Limbs Radiohead live session from the basement is up on YouTube. So anybody who wants to catch up with Radiohead or it's one of the weirder stuff. So maybe you'll be into it.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
I'll be
And,
into it.
At this point, someone's just gonna have to suggest a Radiohead album for the weekly.
Yeah, but that is like so like hopefully everyone has heard most of their albums. It's not like I'm gonna fucking suggest Pablo Honey or some shit. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just
I
suggesting.
don't know, like, I think it's pretty cool to suggest albums that everyone's listened to anyway, just for the
yeah, I guess
discussion.
that's true because we haven't listened to them in the intentional way that we've been listening to these albums anyway. So
And I would like to hear your guys' like opinions as artists and how it's relative to what you're doing now.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just suggesting if y'all have time or have something to watch. It's actually pretty good. I'm not the biggest fan of King of Limbs, but the live version is like a lot better than the album. So
Absolutely.
you like appreciate it a lot more. So yeah, just not
All right.
part of the thing, but just putting it out there. Cool.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And listen to the new Kongbin track. Since we listened to their album, I think that a few of these artists we should keep up with, and they've been releasing some pretty good tracks. So
I think
Okay.
you should try and listen to A Crow is White that Jimmy suggested, the one that you missed. I think you would really like it, just for the popular.
Okay.
That's super pop.
And Talk just because it's like Radiohead before Radiohead existed.
I've listened to a little bit of both of them, but I do need to listen to the full album.
Yeah, but A Crow is White is something I would like you to listen to a lot because just vocally I think you would appreciate it.
That one's super short too.
Yeah, it's
All
super
right.
short too, and it's really good. Like you'll love it for sure. So,
Sounds good.
I gotta go eat some dinner.
We gotta
Yeah.
go because this is too long of a video. But
yeah.
all right.
All right.
Good to
All right.
see you guys.
Later.
All right, see you later.
Bye.
See you Friday, probably. Some of you. Let's see
All
ya.
right.
Take care.
Take care, guys.
See ya.